Hey guys, what is going on? So I just wanted to talk about something a little bit different today, and that is shoulder training. So I understand that I primarily talk about supplements on this channel, but I do get quite a few questions regarding my training and my diet. And one of the most common questions I get is regarding my shoulder training, or just overall comments on my shoulder development, which is interesting considering I don't really train my delts all that much, or at least I haven't over the course of my lifting career. But I have started to emphasize them a bit more recently, and I've gotten really good results. And I want to share what I do and what I have found to be effective and what I find is really not all that effective. So the first thing that I can easily recommend is to do some shoulder activation work prior to doing compound lifts. So a lot of people, when they bench press, right, they have different muscle imbalances. They emphasize different muscle groups more than others. Some people get a lot more out of their bench press in terms of chest development, or some get more tricep development, or, a lot of people like me have a lot more shoulder dominance in the bench press, and therefore our shoulders get tired. And this depends on, which muscles are the most active, which ones you activate prior to the lifts, which ones are strongest, everything like that. And one thing that I did when I was younger, which I think has allowed me to really get a lot out of compound lifts in terms of shoulder development, has been doing shoulder activation prior to those compound lifts. And this was not something that I knowingly did. I just did this in the context of lifting with my teammates when I was in high school. So for me, my lifting experience is primarily just lifting for sports, to be honest. I started lifting when I was 12, but again, it was in the context of getting better at basketball specifically, but just the sports that I played, track and field, football, stuff like that. And the shoulder development that I got from just simply doing bench press, I never did any specific shoulder work. I think that can be credited to doing shoulder activation stuff, which was primarily, an injury prevention method, I would assume, that our trainer implemented when we were, 15, 16 years old, lifting in the weight room. So I got a lot of shoulder development from doing bench press. My shoulders were pretty overactive relative to my chest. And when I started lifting on my own, not with my teammates, doing my own thing, I never did shoulder work because my shoulders already were really active, and I wanted to develop my chest, and I found that my shoulders would kind of take over for that. So fast forward to when I was around 22, that's really when I started to get more into bodybuilding, and I started to actually do some shoulder work again. So this was just simply doing stuff like side laterals. I'm just throwing that into my workout. I didn't have like a shoulder day or anything like that. But I did start to do overhead press for the first time, and I brought my overhead press up from 165 to 245 in a very short period of time. And I think the reason for that was not necessarily that my shoulders were getting so much bigger from the compound lifts, but instead that my shoulders were already so active and had gotten so much development from doing standard bench press and stuff like that, that they had a lot of strength that I just had to unlock. Since then, I've kind of hit a wall at around 245. This was about 2 years ago when I did this. And I ultimately have stopped doing heavy overhead press. And the reason for this is that my back is underdeveloped. I didn't realize this until relatively recently. But when I would do more than like 200 pounds, for example, for reps, I would start to notice that my upper back would get strained because I didn't really lift all that much for my back. I just did, some standard lat pull down, stuff like that. I didn't emphasize my back. And this is something that I need to work on. And I don't really think that the heavy compound lifts really do all that much for my shoulders anyway. But I do think since I've activated them, they have gotten some pretty good development from that. But what I've done recently has really been what has exploded my shoulders, in my opinion. So basically, all the heavy compound lifts to some extent can develop your shoulders, but what has done the most for me is just doing standard shoulder isolation exercises. And these are going to be very simple, to be honest. So one of the major things that I've found is that the rear delt gets neglected to a significant degree. And I basically had no rear delts, even back when I was overhead pressing 245. I didn't really work on my rear delts, and I found that working on them kind of brings that fullness to the shoulder that a lot of people are missing. So I would recommend doing any rear delt exercise that you can find. People have different exercises that they find to be beneficial. For example, the rear delt fly, or the reverse pec deck machine, I don't personally find that to hit my rear delts all that well, but if I just do dumbbell, rear flies or whatever you want to call those, I really get a good activation there. If I take a cable and, really feel the contraction while pulling it out, I feel a good contraction there. But again, the rear delt machine, I don't really find that is all that effective for me. So just find what ends up working for you, but I would emphasize your rear delt above all else. And then the next thing I would say is for side delts, one great thing that you can do is be really strict with your side laterals. So a lot of people swing the weight, they take 50-pound dumbbells and they're just swinging them all day. I try and really kind of make that a difficult movement where I'm working my side delts to a greater degree. Another great way to do this is to use a cable, bring it from the bottom, go all the way out, and that's going to benefit your rear delts to a much greater degree because you're constantly fighting gravity in that regard, and you can lean into the movement one way or another to emphasize it a bit more or less, and I think that's going to be beneficial in developing those side delts as well. Front delts, I don't really worry about, to be honest. You're going to get a lot of activation from just doing compound lifts anyway. I do one front raise exercise when I do my shoulder days, but that is about it. But other than that, that is primarily what I'm doing. So I'm doing like side laterals to a certain degree. I'm doing a lot of rear delt stuff, and I'm doing a lot of volume on those side laterals and just really trying to emphasize building those up in a slow fashion and not focusing on ego lifting. Nobody cares if you can do the 50s on side laterals. It's all about, the size of your delt. Another thing is when you do your side laterals, you can also, as opposed to just holding your arms straight out and that being the end of the lift, you can actually bring them up and get more shoulder activation. So this is going to benefit you to an even greater degree. And it's going to allow you to develop your shoulders much more than if you just were to stop right out at around a 90-degree angle. So with all of those things, I would say emphasize your rear delts to the greatest degree, then your side delts. Front delts, maybe not as much, and compound lifts can be beneficial, but make sure that you're activating your shoulders prior to doing those lifts and really do high reps and try and do high frequency as much as possible. Your shoulders can handle more volume than you think, and doing lifts like that is going to be much more beneficial in the long run than just focusing on doing shoulder press, right? I don't do dumbbell shoulder press. I don't really do overhead press anymore. I don't do anything like that. I just do, simple dumbbell work, work on, again, my rear delts, side delts using cables, using dumbbells, whatever it needs to be, and really focus on that contraction. And it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. The final thing I would say is I always finish off my shoulder workouts by surfing the rack with side laterals. So I'll start out at 30-pound dumbbells and work my way all the way down. I just do one set of that at the end to kind of finish off my delts, and you're good to go in that regard. Also, in terms of rear delt exercises, don't forget to do face pulls. I think you should be doing those regardless. I think you should be working on your upper back regardless. And doing all of that has transformed my shoulders as of recent. So I just want to share that with you guys. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I'll keep you updated, and I'll talk to you soon.